It's no secret that animation has had a very rough time this year. From cancellations to straight up wiping out all the media off the face of the internet itself, animation has never been in such a rough spot. And this year's releases really do reflect that. When you really think about it, there realistically has not been many animated movies that have hit theaters. Almost half of the list I am about to show you have either gone directly to streaming or have had poor advertising and gone to streaming shortly after. But nevertheless, animation hasn't been entirely terrible this year. This year has given us some real fantastic pieces of animated movies, despite how scarce the amount is. Some of them have even now become some of my favorite anime movies from these studios, period. That being said, this was a very hard list to make. I really did try excluding hybrids, but with the state of animation now, that was almost nigh impossible. So, without further ado, here's my top 10 picks for anime movies of 2022. Yep, that is how little anime movies we have had this year. My 10th favorite movie of this entire year isn't even a top 10 Pixar movie for me. Lightyear is definitely out there. It definitely has a lot of heart and passion put into building Buzz as a character, but at the same time, it's ruined by such a ridiculous framework that falls apart when you think about it even just for a little bit. I think the idea of this movie being anti-Star Wars was extremely compelling, but having this movie created based off a real person that inspired the Buzz Lightyear toy is where things get kinda stupid. Like, you mean to tell me toy companies wouldn't make toys of any other character in this movie? Despite that, this movie ended up being very cute. That's the best way I can realistically describe it. The biggest highlight I can give this movie is that its opening and final act is done extremely well. Buzz is such an arrogant asshole who focuses more on his mission than anything else, and it forces him to lose smaller meaningful moments in his and his friend's life that he doesn't even realize how important it is until it's already gone. He is a space ranger at heart that is too buried in his work to look at the things right in front of him. It's a very important lesson Buzz needs to learn by the end, which I think personally helps to recontextualize Buzz Lightyear as a character in Toy Story movies, even if this isn't actually the same Buzz. Again, the framework is really ridiculous. The Zurg twist was executed great. I love how his arguments can be justifiable. They aren't justified, but they can be argued to be right to him. It paints Buzz in such a negative light because while he genuinely cares, he understands that trying to change the lives of his friends through time travel is exactly what the problem was. Being too focused on the mission and not the people he loves. So yeah, I really did enjoy Buzz's arc a lot in this movie. But everything else was just kinda okay. The characters are fine. The jokes are fine. The animation and action is fine. It had a very satisfying story for Buzz, but everything else was just kinda eh. After over a decade, the king of stop-motion animation himself, Henry Selick, finally returns with a gorgeous, heartfelt movie about moving on and the importance of forgiveness and family. You can really tell that he desperately wanted to make this movie by just watching all these characters with such depth and layers behind each and every one of them. Wonder and Wild themselves have a very great dynamic and are very fun characters who just want a life of their own where they can bring entertainment to all, because they themselves only had each other to give joy to after being locked away by their father. This movie had so many amazing ideas and concepts that paid off really well in the final act when the true enemy of the movie is capitalism. Which is ironic given the state of animation right now is due to capitalists themselves. While I do think that the characters are very fleshed out and the animation is gorgeous as always, this movie can feel extremely bloated and full. It feels like for every new idea they introduce that it could feel like its own separate movie in of itself. And I think that is really what brings this movie down a lot for me. There's so many interesting ideas that Henry wanted to see given enough screen time, but given the amounts of just how many there are, I don't think there was enough that he could have done to balance the story without making this either separate movies or a full-on TV show. Which, by the way, wouldn't be a terrible idea. I would watch a whole TV show dedicated just to wacky adventures of Wonder or Wild. But besides that, this is a very well-crafted movie with great characters and a strong child protagonist that isn't just your typical girl boss, edgy, moody teenage girl, even if it's not quite a masterpiece like Coraline or Nightmare Before Christmas.
I'd be happy to show you the way.
Look, those idiots don't even know where we live.
Okay, listen, I really avoided putting this movie on the list for personal bias reasons. But I'm sorry. You can write this off as an illegitimate placement if you want, and I'll understand. But I would still absolutely love Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I already have a full-on video that I'm still proud of, so I'll keep this brief. Sonic 2 recontextualizes everything that Sonic as a franchise stands for. The importance of friendship and family, the hope of a brighter future, the idea of second chances. It is also perfectly crafted into an exceptional movie with a very self-contained story that doesn't require homework of the games or even the first movie to watch. It does have dips in quality here and there though. The wedding stuff is kind of ridiculous, but it's still very fun to watch, and Tom being Sonic's illegitimate dad will always be very awkward. But nonetheless, this movie has a lot of passion and heart put into it with some pretty impressive direction at some points for a Sonic movie. That and the script is really well made, seeing as how the GOAT of children's movies himself, John Winnington, wrote it. He always does a fantastic job at integrating simple yet interesting and mature themes that both adults and children can understand. And this one definitely did not disappoint. Honestly, I've been a DreamWorks stan for about a year now, and movies like this with fun and complex characters on an interesting world with wholesome themes will make me prefer DreamWorks over Disney movies nowadays. The Bad Guys is fantastic, not just from an anime standpoint, but from a writing and storytelling perspective as well. It subverts your expectations to create this idea that not everything is black and white as the world expects it to be. Real people can't be simply all good or all bad. All it takes is for one good or bad deed. One small change or conflict in morality change a person and make them think about the stance of the world entirely. And this movie perfectly reflects that. Not only does Wolf show his complexity by wanting to be a good person without even knowing it, but the rest of his group slowly starts to realize that they are only like this because that's what the world saw them as. They never had a chance to be actual good people, so they felt like the world was better off if they were bad guys. The world these characters live in is so single-minded that it makes it painfully easy for characters like Guinea Pig or Fox to hold these secret identities themselves because of the naivete of the ideas of good and bad. The heist aspect of this movie also utilizes this theme to its fullest. Normally, heists are considered to be something only the villainous and scum would do to benefit their own needs, but here the movie ends with a heist to save everyone instead of something for their own interests. If anything, I do think that it does get kind of predictable at times, such as the separation of the bad guys, as well as the Guinea Pig being the twist villain in the movie. That and sometimes there's a bit of hand-holding in the movie for what the theme is practically told you, but it's still a great time nonetheless. Man, I also didn't expect to relate a show that happened to wear shoes this much. This movie is without a doubt a very moving film that you think is just gonna be a collection of cute adventures with this little shell. But as the movie continues, you can really start to understand the meaning behind this idea of this little shell exploring the big and vast open world, finding his family and getting the spotlight that he has so desperately wanted his whole life. Marcel is such a sweet and innocent soul that tries to smile through every hardship simply because it's better than feeling scared of the unknown and saddened by the loss of someone you love. And in the end, his determination to keep going does end up with a very satisfying conclusion that utilizes the documentary format perfectly. This is such a meaningful film to me, and I love the message about change and how terrifying it can be. But it's okay, because no matter what you do, things are going to change. It's up to you how you handle it. And Marcel showed that, while afraid of it, he accepted change. And that's how he found his family once again. I will say though, this movie isn't flawless. While this movie is extremely relatable, I think that sometimes it can drag out a bit too long. This might just be a me thing, but I think a lot of scenes could have been trimmed down or cut entirely, and you can still keep the emotional core of the movie. But I guess that's something you needed if you really were going to tell a documentary type movie. Though I would have really loved to dive deep into Dean's character because it did find his small growth very interesting. And I think some of the jokes that came after the emotional scenes did kill the tone for me. However, I still think it's an exceptionally made film made by such an amazing film company like A24. To quote my Letterboxd review, I hate rom-coms. This was fantastic. I think the thing that I personally don't find interesting about rom-coms is that there's not too much you can do outside of the acting to represent the crazy feeling of love. The complex emotions that you feel in the moment, whenever it's meeting up with an old flame, finding someone you're attracted to, or simply being together with your significant other, all of it is perfectly expressed through its movie's unique animation and galactic vibes throughout the whole movie. This movie is so vibrant and colorful, with almost every scene being a gorgeous piece of art that reflects nicely on the essence of what love can be for people. The romance aspect of this movie is great because the boy and Meadow have such a real and fun dynamic with each other, and it never comes too cliche or simple. They're both kind of completely different people that admire each other, flaws and all, and I'm surprised how well it worked, because not everybody is going to be a perfect match that has the same interests or ideals. Sometimes it just takes those smaller moments and unconditional times of affection that sparks that feeling to people that end up making them great for each other. And I honestly can't believe this movie had a great message about finding your perfect match and how scarce that could be, and to make sure that you can hold on to it if you truly find that relationship meaningful.
Love is a motherfucker, boys. It'll find us all. It'll hurt us all. But god damn it, it's the only thing that'll save us all. If you got it, hold on to it.
And it's not just a romance. The boy as a character is very interesting to watch. He struggles to find his identity in a company that always wants to change it. His story was fun and cool to watch, and the animation does a great job at showing us his conflict of identity rather than just simply telling us. But that being said, I just wish we saw more of it. So the weird thing with this movie is I guess it wasn't a movie to start off with. I don't know, when I watched it, apparently it was its own miniseries that was edited into a movie, so a lot of its editing and pacing was kinda weird. It throws me off sometimes. And that might be why Tabai's story was cut kinda short, because maybe it was dedicated to its own couple episodes or something. That, and while I think this definitely blows the arguments of animation being a genre out of the water, some adult-oriented scenes are just kinda there, without being integrated into a story, or its themes are just there to be adult-oriented. Yep, that's right, baby. Super Pets is top 5. Yeah! Again, I have like a whole lot of video on this. So to keep this short, while this movie isn't as thought-provoking or has too much complexity like the other movies on this list, I don't necessarily think it needs to. Simple stories work if you have very endearing and fun characters, and that is exactly what this movie has. All of the pets have their own little character arcs that don't kill the pacing of this movie and tie in very well with Crypto's own arc of being happy for Clark, even if he's not in the picture. This is also very reflected by Lulu and her motivations of wanting Lexi's full attention, and see how those toxic emotions can lead to disastrous consequences, furthering Crypto's arc even more. Not too much to say that I've already said it in my previous video. It's just an amazing time with endearing characters, amazing action, with surprisingly great performances from both The Rock and Kevin Hart, two actors I absolutely despise. Wow, I've really talked about a lot of 2022 anime movies this year, huh? Though, one thing to add that I kind of forgot about in this previous video.
I'm April O'Neil, journalism major. I write for the East Laird University Daily News.
April is such a great character that feels like her own independent hero that contributes a lot to the team. I absolutely love her personality and her dangerous and violent tendencies. It makes for such a fun time while I'm not watching the epic and inspiring journey of the turtles. She is an absolute maniac and I love it. Casey is also a really good character. He's not overly dependent on the turtles and ends up being the driving force for Leo's arc in the movie. I also like how he isn't reliant about thinking the events that lead to world destruction and focus on the events that happen in this timeline. It's changes to time travel stories like that that makes me adore almost everything about this movie. Again, hear me know a lot more about this movie in a different video though. To be perfectly honest, I did not expect to love the awe-inspiring, wonderful, jaw-dropping miracle that is Pinocchio. Wait, you're telling me that this is the wrong Pinocchio clip? Sorry, let me pull up the real clip. This movie in its entirety is expertly crafted that uses its shifting tones with the animation to create such a masterful scenes that set the entire movie in motion. Pinocchio just wants that love and acceptance from a broken shell of a man. And you don't need overly long talking scenes or emotional baiting to do this. You just need amazing direction, perfect use of the musical format, and an excellent master of setting the tone of the scene. Wait, you're telling me this is the wrong Pinocchio clip too? How many companies suck the money from this IP? Oh dear God.
My son, you are my shining sun.
Yeah, without a doubt, I adore almost everything about Del Toro's Pinocchio. The first act is probably one of the strongest first acts I've ever watched in an anime movie. Period. Mulan, Spider-Verse, and Incredibles are good arguments for this, but you have this extremely sad story told to you through a song about a father's love, already knowing beforehand that this son would die in a tragic accident. My favorite scene in this entire movie is when Geppetto cuts down the tree that had been growing ever since his son's death, while Geppetto did not, as he used it to try and relive the past once again. And oh my god, this had to be one of the best examples of experimenting in a movie, where you have this whimsical song as you watch this monstrosity of a creation come to life, watching him destroy and wreck things throughout Geppetto's house, and then see this innocent child slowly learn how cruel the world and people truly are. There's a chance I will dedicate a whole video on this movie, but just know that this movie has such a very strong final act with a perfect first act, with honestly kind of a weak middle, even though it's still great nonetheless. Before we get into my top pick, I guess it's a good time to talk about the honorable mentions that didn't quite make the list. Strange World is without a doubt kind of a disappointment. It is overflowing with such amazing ideas behind its world building, its themes of a broken family and environmentalism, that is held back by an honestly pretty basic story. I really do enjoy the twist about technology being the root of all the problems, and the dynamic between the clades is great. I love watching Jagger and Turtza argue all the time, only for them to realize that they're both kind of terrible people and need to do better for their family. But I don't know, I feel like the pacing was kind of wacky and didn't give the movie quite enough time to explore all the things that could have made this movie great. Almost every side character is just kind of there with not much depth. I would have loved to learn more about them, but everything outside the clay dynamic is just kind of meh. This movie really tried so hard to be How to Train Your Dragon so badly. Unfortunately, it just didn't have the same nuance or deeper exploration between two races that How to Train Your Dragon had. It's not that it's bad at all, the whole movie is fun throughout. I love seeing all the other sea creatures, and the aesthetic behind the movie is really well done. But I feel like that this movie gets kind of repetitive because it feels like I've already seen this done before, but better. Yep, it wasn't even close. You know why I delayed this video until 2023? This is why. I was really expecting to just make this video without this movie in mind until I started seeing exceptional reviews of this movie. So I was kinda intrigued to watch the movie and review it. And holy fuck, this movie goes off hard for no reason. It is legitimately my third favorite movie of 2022, period. How did this happen? They're dumber than this.
Apparently not.
I don't want to go too much into this movie because I want to save a lot of my thoughts for its own video, but just know that almost every single frame of this movie is perfectly crafted as a spectacular, emotional, epic, and mature anime movie. Everything the past movies on this list tried to do for animation, this movie did and exceeded with flying colors. When intergalactic argued the stance of animation being a genre, this movie destroyed it by telling a surprisingly mature story about Puss coming to grips with his mortality and the value of life. When Super Pets and Wendell and Wild created fun side characters, this movie made exceptional side characters that all have meaning and purpose that never annoyed me or felt like they took up too much time in the movie. When Rise of the TMNT created a menacing villain, this movie created one of the most menacing villains in animated history, along with very well crafted side villains that all had purpose in the movie. When Pinocchio had an absolute perfect first and third act, this movie had a fantastic first act, an emotional and heartfelt second act, with a jaw-dropping and gripping final act. I don't even know what else to say. I really don't without spoiling this movie. Just please, go watch Puss in Boots and Last Wish. You'll be pleasantly surprised over this. This is the Spider-Verse of DreamWorks. There! I said it! You all thinking it! You're all too cowardly to say it, and I said it! Overall, 2022 has been a pretty rough year for animation, honestly. There have been absolute gems of this year, however. I just really wish that animation's reputation wasn't ruined by Zaslav's plan to destroy every animated project in existence to create his own film galactic empire.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
But 2023 really does look like to be a fantastic year, and hopefully the resurgence of animation as well. Across the Spider-Verse this year, and that is the only example I would need. And if you disagree with anything on this list, then I guess you can all gang up on me the way every Spider-Man ganged up on Miles in the comment section. Thank you all so much for watching. I think I'm personally getting better at making tier lists ever since my YouTube career, and I honestly have a lot of fun making them. If you enjoyed, be sure to let me know your thoughts on your top 10 anime movies, or just movies in general of this year, or your thoughts on my list. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit the little notification bell so you can know if I have future content releases. Also, be sure to check out my other details on my Twitter in the description below. I'm your favorite Cowboy, signing off.